My name is Belinda. I am 34 years old, and for the last decade of my life, my entire identity has been intertwined with Vertex Firewall, the cybersecurity company my husband, Jackie, and I built from nothing more than an idea and a mountain of debt. We started with 2 laptops in our tiny, cramped apartment, fueled by endless cups of cheap coffee and the boundless optimism of our youth. Jackie was always the charismatic frontman, the silver-tongued visionary who could dazzle investors and charm clients with a single, perfectly timed joke. I was the quiet architect working in the background, the brilliant mind who wrote the complex, elegant code that formed the unbreakable backbone of our entire operation. We lived in a beautiful, minimalist penthouse high above the city, a symbol of our success. But sometimes, standing in that vast, echoing space, I felt like a ghost in my own life. A small, persistent voice in my head whispered that I had become invisible, that I did all the hard, thankless work, while Jackie happily basked in the bright lights of our shared success. I loved him deeply, or so I told myself, so I always pushed that nagging voice away, silencing it for another day, for another year, until it became a faint, background hum. The crack in my perfect world appeared on a Tuesday. I was working late at the office, putting the final touches on a major project update that would secure our largest client yet. My own computer charger had suddenly died, and I knew Jackie kept a spare in his desk drawer. I walked into his dark, silent office, the city lights twinkling like fallen stars far below his panoramic window. I found the charger easily, but as I pulled it from the drawer, my hand brushed against the soft, expensive cashmere scarf he had worn that very morning. Almost without conscious thought, I brought the fabric closer to my face, inhaling deeply. A strong, distinctly floral perfume filled my nostrils, a sweet, cloying, and unmistakably expensive scent. It was absolutely not my perfume. A cold, hard knot of pure dread instantly tightened deep in my stomach, and my heart began to beat a frantic, panicked rhythm against my ribs, a drum of impending doom. This was the first real, undeniable fissure in the perfect, shiny world I had so foolishly believed we built together. A hairline crack that threatened to shatter my entire reality into a million unrecognizable pieces. My mind was screaming, my intuition shrieking a 5-alarm warning I could no longer ignore. That foreign, intimate scent was a clue, a digital footprint in the real world, and as a top-tier cybersecurity expert, uncovering hidden truths and deceptions was my specialty, my greatest and most dangerous skill. With fingers that trembled only slightly, a betraying shake I quickly suppressed, I opened my own powerful laptop right there in the dark of his office. I quickly and easily bypassed the laughably weak security on Jackie's personal cloud account. He was always too arrogantly overconfident, too convinced of his own invincibility to use strong, unique passwords. What I discovered there, illuminated by the cold blue light of my screen, made the blood drain from my face and run cold in my veins. It was a digital treasure chest of lies and betrayal, meticulously documented. Hotel receipts for romantic suites in the city I had never visited. Intimate, smiling selfies taken in a bathroom mirror I did not recognize. And messages, so many messages, exchanged with a young, bright-eyed intern named Shakira, filled with heart emojis and secret plans. He used the same sweet, loving words for her that he had once reserved only for me. The very words that had once made my own heart soar with happiness and belief. I sat alone in the dark, silent office for what felt like an eternity. The cold, blue glow from my screen the only thing illuminating the silent hot tears tracking down my cheeks. I read his cruel, mocking words to her over and over, each one feeling like a physical blow to my chest, stealing the air from my lungs. They were not just about passion or stolen moments. They openly mocked me, his wife, the woman who had stood by him for 10 years. He wrote, "Belinda is so boring, all work and no fun. She'd rather debug code than have a good time." He told Shakira, "You remind me of who I used to be before my life became so predictable and suffocating." The pain was a sharp, physical ache deep in my chest, so intense I could barely draw a full breath. This was not just a simple betrayal of our marriage vows. It was a vicious, premeditated attack on my very soul, my identity, my worth as a person. He was privately laughing at the quiet, dedicated person I was, the very person he had publicly claimed to love and admire for a decade. My whole world, my entire sense of reality and self shattered into a million sharp, glittering pieces in that silent, dark room, with only the hum of the server rack for company. I heard his key turning in the penthouse door later that night, the familiar sound now feeling like an intrusion. I had long since wiped my tears and was sitting perfectly calm and still on our expensive white sofa, a statue of composure. He walked in, smelling strongly of whiskey, and underneath it, that same unmistakable floral perfume that now felt like a weapon. He smiled his most charming, disarming smile and leaned down to kiss my forehead, his lips cold. "How's my brilliant little hermit?" he asked, his tone dripping with a condescension I realized I had been willfully ignoring for years. A powerful, terrifying rage exploded deep inside me, so potent and white-hot it scared me with its raw, untamed intensity. But on the outside, I did not move a single muscle. I gave him a soft, placid smile in return, a perfect mirror of wifely devotion. I stood up gracefully and poured him a tall glass of ice water, my hand steady. I asked him about his day, my voice light and steady, devoid of accusation. This was the beginning of the greatest, most critical performance of my entire life, a role I would play to perfection. I would not, under any circumstances, let him see me shatter. I would let him believe he was safe until the moment he was not. The next morning, I woke up after a few hours of fitful sleep, and the crushing, debilitating sadness was mysteriously gone. It had been completely replaced by a cold, clear, and singular purpose that sharpened my focus to a laser point. I stopped crying immediately and started strategically, methodically collecting digital evidence. I used my unparalleled skills to hunt down every one of Jackie's secrets, leaving no server unchecked, no encrypted folder unopened. I secretly copied every incriminating email, every suspicious financial record, every hidden company transfer he was certain I knew nothing about. I created a special, heavily encrypted digital folder on a secure remote server, protected by layers of code of my own devising. I named it Phoenix, after the mythical bird that rises triumphantly from its own ashes, more powerful and beautiful than before. I realized something monumental in that moment of cold clarity. I did not just possess proof of his sordid, cliched affair. I now held the digital keys to all his dirty, fraudulent secrets, the massive financial crimes and embezzlement he had been systematically hiding from the board, from the government, and from me, his partner in all things. I knew I needed to confide in one person, one anchor, or the immense weight of my discovery and the fury that accompanied it would surely drive me insane. I went to see my aunt, Gabriella, the very next day. She was a retired defense attorney, a famously sharp, fierce, and uncompromising woman who had seen the darkest sides of human nature. I told her the entire, painful, sordid story in the quiet, sunlit sanctuary of her kitchen, the scent of fresh coffee between us. She listened without uttering a single word of interruption, her keen, intelligent eyes missing nothing, absorbing every detail. When I finally finished, my voice raw, her gaze was hard and flinty like polished steel, a look I knew meant business. She leaned forward across the wooden table and firmly held my shaking hands in her steady ones. "Listen to me carefully, Belinda," she said, her voice low, serious, and filled with a grim conviction. "Don't just leave scorched earth behind you, my dear. Anyone can burn a field. Leave salted ground. Ensure that nothing, absolutely nothing, can ever grow there for him again." Her powerful, ancient words gave me immense strength and a crystal-clear mission. This was no longer a personal heartbreak. It was now a declared war, and I intended to be the last one standing on the battlefield. A week later was the company's lavish annual gala, a glittering event filled with the city's elite, all there to celebrate Vertex Firewall's success, my success. Jackie stood proudly on the stage, raising a crystal glass and giving a grand, self-congratulatory toast about his bold, unparalleled vision for the future. I saw Shakira, the young intern, standing near the stage, looking smug and possessive in a tight black dress, clinging to his every word as if they were gospel. I was wearing a stunning, brilliantly crimson dress I had bought specifically for this very moment. It was the color of war, of blood, of undeniable, fierce power. I walked calmly, deliberately up to the stage and took the microphone directly from a surprised and momentarily confused Jackie, his smile faltering. I smiled sweetly at the packed, expectant ballroom. To my husband's remarkable vision, I said, my voice honey-sweet but my eyes locked on his with an icy, unwavering precision. It's so very clear to me now. The grand room instantly filled with a wave of confused, nervous whispers packed the first palpable ripple of the coming storm I would unleash upon him, a tremor before the earthquake. My quiet, calculated war had now officially begun, and my first move was a masterstroke of subtle sabotage. I anonymously and securely sent a small, carefully selected piece of financial data to a popular and influential tech blog known for its investigative work. It detailed a minor but deeply embarrassing accounting discrepancy within our company's otherwise pristine records, a small thread I knew would unravel the entire tapestry. The blog published the story within hours, scenting blood in the water. The very next day, I watched with a detached satisfaction from my computer terminal as Vertex Firewall's stock price dipped noticeably, a small but significant drop. I observed from my desk as Jackie ran around the open plan office, frantically putting out the fire, his voice strained as he assured everyone it was merely a clerical error. A simple, innocent mistake soon to be corrected. He had absolutely no idea who was truly behind the leak. He was fighting a ghost. A vengeful, intelligent shadow he could not see, touch, or comprehend, a phantom in his own machine. And I, from the darkness of my own code, was only just beginning to flex my power. I knew a small stock dip was not enough. I needed to create much bigger, more serious, institutional problems for him. Problems that would attract the gaze of powerful, unforgiving entities. Using a sophisticated military-grade app to perfectly disguise my voice, I made a secure, untraceable phone call from a public phone booth. I called a notoriously tough and diligent agent at the IRS, a man known for his relentless pursuit of tax cheats. I gave him a detailed, anonymous tip about serious, glaring irregularities in Jackie's personal tax filings over the last 3 years. I specifically mentioned the large, recurring consulting fees, totaling over $200,000, he was paying to a corporate entity I knew for a fact was a hollow shell company, a phantom corporation he used to secretly hide money and avoid paying his fair share. A few days later, an official, intimidating letter from the federal government arrived at our penthouse. It was a formal notice of a comprehensive, no stone unturned tax audit. Jackie's face turned a sickly, pale shade of gray when he opened it, his hands trembling slightly. His smooth, unshakable, confident mask was finally beginning to crack under the pressure, and the first real flicker of fear showed in his eyes. I knew with utter, cold certainty that it was time for me to leave, to sever myself physically from the scene of the crime. I could not spend another single night under the same roof as that man, breathing the same air, pretending everything was normal. With the steadfast, practical help of my Aunt Gabriella, I quickly secured a small, safe, and anonymous apartment in a completely different neighborhood, paying in cash to leave no digital footprint. I quietly, methodically, over the course of a week, moved my most essential belongings and my precious Paragon files, my digital sword and shield, into a secure, climate-controlled storage unit under a false name, a physical and digital arsenal hidden in plain sight. One evening, after Jackie had left for a business dinner, likely with her, I packed one final bag with the last of my personal items. I placed my penthouse key neatly on the pristine, cold marble of the kitchen counter. Right next to it, I left a single printed note, the font stark and impersonal. It contained only 2 simple, devastating words, "I know." Then I walked out, closing the heavy, ornate door firmly on that entire gilded chapter of my life forever, without a single backward glance. I felt a strange, powerful sense of calm settle over me, the profound calm of the eye of the hurricane, a stillness before the final, destructive winds are unleashed. The next critical step was legal, and it had to be devastating, a precise surgical strike from which he could never recover. I scheduled a discreet meeting with a renowned divorce attorney named Abigail Stone, a woman whose reputation for brilliance and ruthlessness was legendary in legal circles. My Aunt Gabriella had assured me she was the best, the one you called when you wanted to win, not just settle. In her sleek, modern, and intimidatingly expensive office, I did not simply ask for a divorce. I opened my laptop with a steady hand, entered a complex password, and showed her the entire, meticulously organized Paragon folder, a comprehensive catalog of Jackie's crimes and infidelities. Abigail scanned the files quickly, her sharp, analytical eyes missing nothing, and a slow, cold, predatory smile spread across her face, the smile of a shark that has scented blood in the water. She looked up at me, her gaze filled with a fierce, professional respect. "Mrs. Owens," she said, her voice crisp, clear, and utterly devoid of pity, "let me be perfectly clear. This is not a simple divorce case. What you have brought me today is a detailed blueprint for a total and complete execution." Her words were harsh and unforgiving, but they filled me with a surging, electrifying sense of strength and absolute certainty in the path I had chosen. Finally, I had a general for my war. Then, a surprise ally emerged from the shadows of the crumbling Vertex firewall, a turn of events I had hoped for, but not expected. Cosmos, the company's ethical and deeply principled chief financial officer, sent me a secret, heavily encrypted email to a brand new account I had created. He was a good, honest man who had never approved of Jackie's increasingly shady and risky business practices, often voicing his concerns in meetings that were subsequently ignored. He had always respected my intellect, my integrity, and the quality of my work. He wrote that he was utterly tired of watching Jackie systematically destroy the company we had all worked so hard to build, bleeding it dry for his own greed. He formally offered me his help, his insider knowledge. He willingly became my confidential spy on the inside, my eyes and ears within the fortress walls. He provided me with the final, damning pieces of evidence I needed to complete my case. The secret, encrypted records of the substantial funds, over $500,000, Jackie had embezzled from the company over the years, cleverly hidden by layers of tricky, fraudulent accounting and fake vendor invoices. Now, my arsenal was complete. My intelligence was flawless, and my ultimate victory was assured. The trap was set. With Cosmos's crucial inside information and access, we set a perfect, inescapable trap for Jackie, one that would trigger a chain reaction of catastrophic consequences. We sent an anonymous, yet highly detailed and technically specific warning to one of our most important and risk-averse clients, a major national bank that held millions of customer data records. We informed them, with evidence, that their sensitive data was potentially compromised because Jackie had foolishly cut corners on critical, enterprise-level security protocols I had designed against my explicit, repeated, and documented warnings. The bank was absolutely furious. A multi-billion-dollar institution does not take such existential risks lightly. They immediately filed a massive, multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Vertex Firewall for gross negligence and breach of contract. A legal tsunami. The lawsuit was a catastrophic, 5-alarm fire for Jackie, a concrete monumental problem he could not possibly hope to extinguish with his usual smooth words, charming smile, or empty promises. This was real, and it was devastating. Jackie was now publicly panicking, his carefully constructed image of the unflappable CEO fraying at the edges for all to see. He found me one morning as I was leaving my new gym, looking disheveled, desperate, and haunted, his suit wrinkled and his eyes bloodshot. "Belinda!" he shouted, his voice cracking with a mixture of rage and fear as he grabbed my arm roughly. "What in God's name are you doing? You are systematically destroying everything we built together." I firmly, deliberately pulled my arm away from his grasping hand and looked directly at him, my face an impenetrable, emotionless mask, my eyes reflecting back the cold void he had created in me. "You confused the architect with the decorator, Jackie," I said, my voice flat, cold, and devoid of any feeling, like synthesized speech. "You built nothing of substance here. I designed it, I coded it, I built it. And now," I said, turning my back on him to walk away towards my new, independent life, "I'm foreclosing." I left him standing alone on the busy, uncaring sidewalk, utterly speechless and visibly shaking with a potent cocktail of pure rage and raw, primal fear. He was finally understanding the scale of his miscalculation. It was time for the final, public, killing blow. The one that would bring the full weight of the federal government down upon him. I sent an edited, anonymized, but thoroughly damning and easily verifiable version of my entire evidence portfolio to the SEC, the powerful government agency that regulates the stock market and investigates financial crimes. I laid out, in meticulous detail, the systematic, widespread fraud Jackie had masterminded, the embezzlement, the shell companies, the lies to investors. The news exploded across every major financial media outlet and cable news network simultaneously. A coordinated digital blitzkrieg. Vertex firewall, under federal investigation for systemic fraud. The headlines screamed in bold, accusatory type. The company's stock price did not just dip, it utterly cratered, crashing straight down in a total, catastrophic freefall, losing over 80% of its value in a single day of frantic trading. Panicked investors and pension funds were dumping their shares as fast as the exchange's servers could process the sell orders. Jackie's entire empire, built on a fragile foundation of lies and stolen valor, was collapsing in real time for the entire financial world to watch, document, and condemn. The ghost had become a hurricane. Then, in a delicious twist of irony, I received a message I never could have anticipated, a gift from the universe that sealed his fate. It was from Shakira, the intern. She was clearly terrified, her carefully curated world of luxury and promise evaporating into a cloud of scandal and bankruptcy. She saw her comfortable, privileged future with Jackie rapidly disappearing into thin air, replaced by the grim prospect of being associated with a national pariah. She had finally realized in a moment of stark clarity that he had been lying to her too, all along, making promises he had no power to keep. She wanted to desperately save herself from the coming legal and social whirlwind. She offered me a simple, desperate deal. In exchange for my legally binding promise not to sue her personally or name her publicly, she handed over crystal-clear audio recordings of private conversations with Jackie. On them, his voice was unmistakable, cold and directive, as he explicitly instructed her to lie to investors and board members about the company's true, precarious financial health during a key due diligence period. It was the final, incontrovertible personal piece of the puzzle, the smoking gun. The rope of justice around Jackie's neck was now pulled completely tight, the noose fastened. There was no escape left for him, no loophole, no sympathetic jury, no way out. He was finished. The board of directors at Vertex Firewall, facing existential threats from massive multi-party lawsuits and a now functionally worthless company, held a frantic emergency meeting that lasted late into the night, the windows of the conference room glowing like a panic beacon. They had only one desperate, self-preserving choice: to try and salvage anything from the smoldering wreckage and distance themselves from the catastrophe. They voted unanimously to fire Jackie for gross misconduct and breach of fiduciary duty, effective immediately, and publicly announced his termination before the markets opened the next morning. I watched a news clip on my phone later that day, a small, quiet, satisfied smile touching my lips for the first time in months. It showed Jackie being publicly escorted out of the gleaming Vertex Firewall headquarters by two stern-faced, armed security guards, his personal effects haphazardly stuffed into a single, small cardboard box. His face was a frozen mask of pure, unadulterated shock and profound shame, his eyes wide with disbelief. A scrum of reporters shouted accusatory questions, and camera flashes lit up his humiliated, pale expression like a strobe light at a perp walk. The once untouchable golden boy of Silicon Valley had fallen from grace in the most spectacular fashion, and the whole world was there to witness and record his very public, very final downfall. The decorator had been evicted from the house the architect built. The divorce courtroom became my final stage, the venue for my ultimate vindication, and I played my part to icy perfection, a portrait of wronged dignity. My lawyer, Abigail, was a magnificent, relentless warrior in a tailored suit, systematically and forensically taking apart Jackie's character and his flimsy, fabricated narrative piece by piece. She showed the judge his secret financial records, the hidden shell companies, and offshore transfers. She played the damning, clear audio recordings of him conspiring with Shakira, his voice a permanent record of his corruption. I sat perfectly still and calm throughout the entire proceeding, back straight, hands folded, a vision of quiet, stoic dignity in a simple, dark dress. When Abigail read his mocking messages about me being boring and predictable aloud in the hushed, packed courtroom, Jackie finally, completely snapped, the pressure proving too much for his fragile ego. He lost his temper, leaping to his feet and screaming at the judge that it was all a twisted lie, that I was a jealous, vindictive woman framing him. In that single, unhinged, disrespectful moment, he proved to everyone present in the room, the judge, the gallery, the press, that he was exactly the volatile, dishonest monster I had claimed he was. He had written his own conviction with his own rage. The judge's final decision, when it came, was a total and unqualified victory for me, a sweeping judgment that left no room for appeal or ambiguity. She granted me the vast majority of our marital assets, a substantial sum that reflected my foundational contribution to the company. I was awarded the penthouse, a hollow, empty trophy I would later sell without a second thought. Most importantly, she ordered Jackie to pay me a huge amount of monthly alimony for a significant period, a figure calculated based on his past, peak income, and his role in the marriage's dissolution. The beautiful poetic problem for him was that he now had no job, no income, no prospects, and a reputation so toxic it precluded any future employment in the industry. He was left with nothing but a mountain of insurmountable personal debts and truly enormous, crippling legal bills from his failed defense. The financial guillotine had dropped with a decisive, final, echoing thud, severing him from the wealth he had so valued. I had officially, legally, and symbolically taken back every single thing he had ever built upon my talent, my relentless work, and my broken trust. Justice was not just served, it was a feast. The federal government, however, was not finished with him yet. My evidence had opened a Pandora's box they were duty-bound to explore. The SEC formally filed multiple criminal charges for securities fraud and wire fraud, charges that carried the very real possibility of a lengthy prison sentence. His professionally taken, smiling headshot was splashed across the front page of every major newspaper and financial website, now juxtaposed with the word fraud in bold, red letters. The headline was simple, brutal, and final. Silicon Valley's golden boy charged with fraud faces decades in prison. His reputation was not just damaged or tarnished. It was completely, irreversibly destroyed, erased from the annals of respectable business. He became a permanent cautionary tale in business schools and tech blogs, a first-year lesson about the perils of unchecked greed, arrogance, and betraying your partners. No one in the legitimate business world would ever trust him with a dollar, let alone a company, ever again. His name was now permanently synonymous with scandal, failure, and criminality, a legacy of his own making. About a year after the dust had settled and the headlines had moved on to fresher scandals, I saw him entirely by accident, a random crossing of paths in a city of millions. I was walking through a quiet, sun-dappled city park on a crisp autumn afternoon, enjoying my freedom. He was sitting alone on a weathered, wooden bench, staring into the middle distance at nothing in particular. He looked a full decade older, his face deeply lined with stress, defeat, and the hard living that follows a great fall. His expensive, tailored suits were gone, replaced by a wrinkled, cheap-looking shirt from a discount store. The fabric thin and worn. The charismatic, magnetic confidence that had once defined his every move, that had once filled a room, was completely extinguished, leaving behind a hollow, vacant shell of the man I had once loved and built a life with. I felt no joy, no schadenfreude, no burning satisfaction in seeing him reduced to this. Instead, I was filled with a clean, simple, profound emptiness, like a field after a wildfire, ready for new growth. The long, exhausting, emotionally draining storm was finally, truly over. The all-consuming anger that had fueled me was gone, its purpose served, leaving only a quiet, peaceful stillness in its wake, a silence I cherished. I used the money from the divorce settlement, not for a life of luxury, but to start something new, something genuinely meaningful and positive, a legacy I could be proud of. I founded a nonprofit organization called Shield Forward, dedicated entirely to providing legal and technical support for the victims of digital fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse. People who had been manipulated, betrayed, and left powerless, just as I had been. I was no longer the invisible, silent ghost in the corporate machine, my contributions unacknowledged. I was now its guardian, its protector, a champion for those who could not fight the powerful, faceless systems on their own. I used my hard-won skills, my painful experience, and my resources to protect the vulnerable, to educate and empower, not to help a liar build a fraudulent empire on a foundation of sand. My work, for the first time in my adult life, had a real, profound, and positive purpose that resonated deep in my soul. It finally felt, unequivocally, like my life, my choices, my time, and my future were entirely my own to direct. A blank page I could fill with whatever I wished. I stood on the balcony of my new, smaller, but infinitely more welcoming home, feeling the warm afternoon breeze on my face, smelling the flowers from the garden below. It was filled with plants and books and art that genuinely brought me happiness, things I had chosen for myself that reflected my taste. I thought deeply about my long, painful, and profoundly transformative journey, from the top of the world to the bottom of the abyss and back again, on my own terms. I realized I had not just barely survived what Jackie did to me. I had been fundamentally forged, strengthened, and reborn in the scorching fire of that betrayal. The terrible, soul-crushing pain and humiliation had not, in the end, broken my spirit or defined me. Instead, it had burned away my weaknesses, my self-doubt, and my need for external validation, revealing a core of immense, resilient, and unassailable strength inside me that I never knew I possessed. It was as hard, brilliant, valuable, and unbreakable as titanium. I was no longer the woman he had so dismissively and cruelly called boring. I was remade. I was tempered steel. I was, and would always be, unbreakable. To anyone listening to my story who has felt that same cold, shocking jolt of discovery, that deep, personal, gut-wrenching betrayal that shakes your world to its very foundations and makes you question everything you thought was real, I want you to know something important. Something I learned the hard way. Your pain is real, and it is valid. Do not let anyone minimize it. Your anger is right, and it is justified. It is a signal that a deep wrong has been committed against you, but you must not let those dark, powerful, all-consuming feelings control you or eat you alive from the inside out. You must learn to harness them, to let them fuel you instead, to power your ascent from the depths, to build the energy for your comeback. They might have taken your trust, your security, your present, but they do not get to take your future, your potential, your destiny. Your true value was never in their hands to define, measure, or diminish. It was always, and will always be, inherent and in yours alone. Own it, reclaim it fiercely, protect it. And always remember this: the most powerful, lasting, and satisfying revenge is not a loud, dramatic, fleeting fight. It is a life lived well, fully, purposefully, and joyfully, with unshakable inner strength, integrity, and true, hard-won peace. Stand tall. Your story is far from over. In fact, this ending is just the beginning of a much more interesting, authentic, and powerful chapter. Now go write it.